far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees. Good day, everyone. I'm Donna Jones Simmons, co-author, co-founder, and the architect of the 100 ABC Women project, as well as the executive producer of our fireside chats. Special thanks to our incredible technical support team, our moderator and panelists, who are the drivers behind our weekly inspirational conversations. Let me now turn you over to our moderator, who will introduce herself to you, as well as today's topic. Thank you.
A pleasant afternoon to you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our special Mother's Day edition titled Taking Care of My Personal Health. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. My name is Andre Nicole. Today I am your moderator / panelist for this afternoon. And you will also meet Miss Lanre Tunji Ajayi, who is also an 100 Accomplished Black Canadian 2019 honoree. However, before we move forward with today's informative webinar, I would like to review some of the norms or expectations with everyone in order to allow today's sessions to be even more unique and engaging. For the viewers, we will continue to work effectively together, pay attention to ourselves and others, and speak our truths. And please feel free to write your questions, comments, and or concerns as it relates to this topic of discussion. And lastly, let us do everything in the realm of educating, elevating, and empowering ourselves. Let us continue to be conscious of allowing for multiple voices to be heard and amplified on this phenomenal platform. Being that it's our special Mother's Day edition, I would like to share these thoughts with you, and it's titled Thinking of You. Thinking of you, mothers who have lost children, those who have lost mothers, those with strained mothers relationships, mothers with strained child relationships, and those who have chosen not to be mothers, and those yearning to be mothers. I celebrate, we celebrate, and embrace you. Now, without further ado, let us commence our informative, candid, and courageous conversations about taking care of our personal health. Today, we have Ms. Lanray. She has a background in patient advocacy and personal care product manufacturing. Lanray is the co-founder, president of All Natural Cosmetics, Inc., also known as the Shea All Naturals. She is also the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Action Network for Sickle Cell and Other Inherited Blood Disorders, GANSID. She's also the President CEO of the Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario. And in Canada, she's currently serving at numerous tables in the federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government, not limited to the Project Heart Advisory Committee at Health Canada, the Black Health Summit table, the Quality Standards Advisory Committee, and the Health Connect Ontario Stakeholder Advisory Council at the Ontario Health, as well as the Public Engagement Review Council at the City of Toronto. Ms. Lanray, we welcome you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure, and happy Mother's Day to you, Andre, all mothers and mother figures. Thank you.
You are most welcome, Ms. Lanray. Thank you so much for extending those Mother Day wishes. As my father said, it is 365 days out of the year. But more importantly, I will just quickly speak about, again, who I am. I am also a 100 Accomplished Black Canadian honoree of 2022. I am I would like to say, a thought leader at the intersection of education and social justice. I have many years of being a teacher educator, embarking upon a principals journey, completed those courses. I've completed my master's at the University of Toronto in curriculum and social justice. There's so many different things. I'm an author of 5 books, 3 to come out, 3 set to be coming out, working with At Promised Youth, and a certified life coach, a mother, a wife, and so much more. However, let us continue on here. I know we've all have probably heard, or maybe not all, the phrase at some point in our lives, and it's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's a well-known English proverb that's used to describe how much easier it is to prevent a problem than wait till after it's happened and try to fix it. It is better and easier to stop a problem or an illness, etc., from happening than to stop or correct it after it has started. Ms. Lanray, as a leader in the beauty industry, how do you suggest we take care of our personal health?
First of all, I'd like to commend you for your amazing background and the great work you're doing to provide education to us and to our young people. I think by being in the know, we also help to prevent a lot of social problems and issues that we're having. And so thank you so much for all that great work. I also want to say that, as you know, we're coming out of the COVID pandemic. Many of us have so many beautiful clothing we have not been able to wear for about 2 years plus. And so we're just dying to just be out there and just be beautiful, have our makeup on and beautiful clothes on. Well, all of that is great and wonderful. I think it's very important to be very mindful of our physical and mental health. physical health is important. We have one body. We have to take care of this one body. If we don't take care of our body, we will lose either parts of our body or we will lose our body entirely. So taking care of our body is very important. And so, first of all, I would say it's important to know your body. It's very important to know your body and to know your family's history. It's also very important. That will, first of all, help you to start to figure out what is normal, what is not normal. What do I need to really be aware of? What should I be aware of, right? Like you mentioned your journey with cancer. And I think by knowing our family history, what is in her family, it's very important to get us to that place whereby we are really probing and looking and checking her as well, right? I think being in the beauty industries, I see, especially women, we care so much about, okay, how do I look? And what is the latest hair, or the makeup, or or the skincare that will help my body? And I always say, beauty actually has to start internally with what you eat. Having a healthy, balanced diet is where to start, right? Lots of vegetables, lots of fruits. It's very important. When you eat well, your skin will glow, it will radiate, it will show. So what you put inside will actually reflect outside. That's what I always say. Now, when you choose your skincare products, I always say to people also, look, read your ingredients. Don't get carried away with the advertisement alone. People will use marketing gimmicks. Read ingredients and understand the ingredients. What does it mean? Many ingredients are carcinogens, and you have to be aware of this. So I always say stay natural. Nature intends us to be natural. Stay natural, use butters and oils that nature has given us. I love the phrase that you say, an ounce of prevention, is very important. And I also want to add another phrase to say that for those who are Christians or understand the Bible, it also says in the Bible that the trees of the nations are for the healing of the nation. We have to go back and start to be natural in what we use, what we eat, less chemicals, less processed food. Please cut off. I'm not saying don't eat the fast food, but please reduce the fast food at least. You might have it once in a while, but don't go heavy on fast food. It destroys your system. It's very important.
Miss Lanray, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You have said so many amazing points and have given, our viewers some great tips. Sometimes we overlook them. And I just wanted to address some of the things that you were talking about in terms of coming out of this pandemic. And, some people using clothing or makeup or things of that nature in terms of taking care of their personal health. I know that myself and my cousins went back to roller skating and we love music, but there are so many things that resonate with me in regards to what you have said in terms of being mindful of your physical health and having this one body and knowing your body and your family history. I briefly mentioned in terms of embarking upon a breast cancer journey in 2019. And it's 3 years that I'm thriving. And would you believe it was positive because, amen, it was positive because of some of the things that you were mentioning. I'm not a medicinal doctor, but I was taught to know my body. And when I felt something that was foreign, I automatically made the appointment online with my doctor. And the following day I was there going through all these different things. So when you know your body and when you know this family history and you also know that you can advocate for yourself, it really just allowed, honestly, I swear to goodness, the journey to just be amazing. You also said that beauty is in the eye of I took it as beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I truly believe that. And you also mentioned in terms of going back to quote unquote, the basics of fruits and vegetables, like what our forefathers have done. And during that process, I went the alkaline way and it totally made a difference. And so I wasn't one to drink or smoke or things of that nature. So when I had to have the mastectomy, the reconstruction surgery, to go through the chemo, to go through the radiation, my body was not used to the medication that I had to take, but it healed. This is what they kept on saying, that it was a healer. So thank you so much for sharing those knowledge, or the knowledge that you have. And I would love for you to continue on,
Thank
please,
you.
in terms of educating us a little bit more.
Thank you. I also believe like some of the tips that will help us in taking care of our body would be exercise. Exercise. Some of us still work from home, right? Like from the COVID, you're working from home. But while you work from home, don't get stuck in front of that computer. It's very easy to keep transferring that email and responding to the next email and taking that phone call. And by the time you look at the time, you've been there 6 hours, just stop. Take breaks, even if it's just 5 minutes. If you have stairs, just go up and down the stairs for 5 times, 6 times, and go back to your work. It will do your body a whole lot of good. Take those breaks. Go for walk, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It have to be straight up, but just exercise, get the fresh air. It's very important. I also believe that using tobacco and a lot of alcohol and vape products is not very good for your body. I would say stay away from them or use them very minimally if you want. But it's best to stay away from those products. They are not good for you. Keep your immunization up to date. It's very important, right? I will also say it's very important to get enough sleep. Honestly, getting enough sleep will really help to refresh your body physically and mentally. I also want to add that meditation is very good. For some people, they spend time praying and connecting with a higher power. For those who maybe don't have a religion, they don't believe in any faith, even just taking that time to meditate and stay in a still space is also very good for your well-being. Nature intends us to not just be the one that is, talking or acting, but also to be still and wait to receive. And that's what meditation, it all balances us out. And when we are balanced, we are healthier physically and mentally. So these are some of the things that I believe, while yes, it's good to take care of our physical beauty, look good, wear the, beautiful hair, beautiful. We have to take care of what we eat and also take care of our physical being and as well as our mental state as well, right? Like meditation will help us mentally, the kind of food we're consuming, checking with our doctor, make sure you go to your doctor's appointment is very important. It will say, it has saved lives, right? I'm going to share a personal example. I lost one of my uncles a few years ago, and I love that uncle because he doesn't believe in yearly checkup. Doesn't believe in yearly checkup. And the one time that he felt sick and he went to the doctor, the colon cancer could have been caught, right? But it wasn't caught. So it's very important that while we're busy and we're running around and we're taking the kids as mothers, we're taking the kids to the game, the basketball game, the soccer game, all of that, we have to work, we have to make ends meet. Let's take a breather and always think about ourselves and say, if I book my yearly checkups, is something feeling fun in my body? I shouldn't ignore it. Like all of these things are very important in taking care of our personal self.
I wrote in the chat, thank you so much for sharing all of that. My condolences to you and the rest of the family in regards to your uncle. I definitely know how that is. And, just losing a lot of loved ones, friends and family from the cancer, and them, meaning my cousins, leaving back their children. It is very hard. I did want to go back over some of the things that you said, just to reiterate it and emphasize the importance of it in terms of, how the pandemic really changed the world and how, whether it was school, whether it was work, whether it was meetings, everything was being done from home. And it was so easy for us to, just continue this mundane kind of routine, so to speak. But you mentioned having those breaks. going for those walks. And it's interesting because during the pandemic, I would always go down to the lake and have those walks. And it does a lot. You mentioned sleep. I know that I'm lacking that, but sleep is when we become restored, right? Whether it's our cells, whether anything within our body. And then the balance that you spoke about, and then you mentioned for those individuals that have a spiritual relationship, whether it's with Allah, with the Creator, that whole moment of being still so that you are able to hear, so to speak, or to just reflect upon certain things and just to go slowly.
Yep.
Is so very important, because you mentioned in terms of, being physically well, mentally well, emotionally, and all the other able bodies. So I truly agree in terms of being aligned in mind, body, and spirit. In terms of the doctor's appointments, what stood out for me when you were mentioning this, Ms. Lonray, is the importance of having a relationship with your doctor. My doctor is my best friend. She was on that entire journey, like literally gave me her cell number and was checking up on and referred to me as her sister. She knew my take, because before this, I would only go to the doctors for checkups, but I would do it the natural way. And I know prior to us being here on the live, we had the opportunity of speaking a little bit, and I mentioned in terms of my parents coming from Jamaica. So it's all the natural herbs and remedies that people have to purchase. They return to Jamaica, they can pick off their property. So I was boiling all of those different things, but I had to stop, not because it was a bad thing, but just they were not sure during surgery if that would promote blood clot or, whatever it may be. However, the relationship that I have with my doctors is so very important. And the checking ups on yourselves is so true, as you mentioned, in terms of your uncle, rest his soul. When I had detected it, it was stage 1. It went into my lymph nodes, but everything is okay. And it was stage 2. So yes, prevention is, so the yearly checkups is very great. And then lastly, I know that in terms of checkups, where it relates to men, they're more so hesitant. I don't know if it's an ego thing. So this ranges from my father to my husband to my son. So I wonder if you could briefly speak on that. And then I have some more questions ready for you.
So I wanted to say that with men, yeah, you're right. It's not, I think it's more about this matching. That, I'm a guy, I'm okay, I'm cool, I'm fine, nothing's wrong with me. And I mean, it's great to be macho, it's great to be cool, but it's not great to find out after, right? That, oh my gosh, I have something that if I had checked earlier, I could have prevented this from spreading and from being a bigger problem. I think it's very important for men to have the prostate check, and in addition to all the other parts of their body, of course, like having that yearly check and make sure every part of the body, things are going well, your organs are functioning well. And we have to be careful also. I find that for those who are from the Black community, we are very prone to diabetes and high blood pressure. So it's very important for us to have a blood pressure machine. I would say from early as even as about 30 years old, as somebody who identified as Black, check your sugar. And when you do those yearly checkups, the doctor will include that in your requisition. If not, ask them to include that in your requisition to the laboratory. Have your sugar checked regularly. Stay away from sweet stuff. I know it's very tempting. We want to have the sweet drinks and all of that. But I think it will do your body a lot of good when you still with either men or women. I believe that sugar is one of the root causes of cancer. So we need to stay away from the processed sugar. So you get sugar still in your food. I mean, most of our food, like your rice, in your beans, still have some level of sugar because your body needs that. But that natural sugar is best for you, right? And also, in addition, there's a gentleman that I know a few years ago that went to his doctor for the PSA test, and the doctor said, the number is slightly high, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And let's check in 6 months. 6 months, this man has already developed prostate cancer. I would say if a doctor tells you something and your mind is telling you maybe I shouldn't wait, then don't wait. If you need to find a second opinion, find a second opinion. Because at the end of the day, the doctor is still here and you might be gone. You are not offending the doctor by you saying, I need you to do something about this slight number. At this point, I don't want to wait. You know, I came from a background whereby the doctors it seemed more like a semi-god. The doctor knows it all. That's my background. People who come from Africa will tell you that we believe in the pastor and in the doctor. You know, those two, they can't go wrong and they're never wrong. But that's not true, right? And we are seeing that doctors are also wrong sometimes. I'm happy you have a great doctor, Andre, but I find that you need to find a second opinion sometimes, and you need to do what you think is best for you.
Oh,
you know?
yes, most definitely. I agree heartily in terms of what you're saying. And that's the whole advocacy piece, because if anyone knows me, I'm quite stubborn. And so there was a point in time where my family was basically saying, please just move in wisdom, because I didn't want to do chemo. I didn't want to do radiation. But however, again, you're saying, having that second opinion is very, very important. My doctor, and I thank God that I do have the relationship that I do with her, or the physicians that I've had, or even the oncologist, or just all the nurses. But they knew my stance in terms of coming from that healthy point of eating or whatnot.
Yeah.
And just like my regimen. And I know beforehand, Ms. Lanray, you had mentioned something about the diet. Well, it's more so like a lifestyle. And I know that you agree, right? When you hear the word diet, you see the word die in there, right? But when we practice a healthy lifestyle in terms of the natural things, and when you were talking about the sugar, yes, it's one of the most addictive drugs,
yes.
Right? And also in terms of the chemicals and how things are, being transported from the States and coming here to Canada, or from wherever we are situated in around the world, to preserve what it looks like. So we ingest that. And it's so different from our forefathers, or, my grandparents or great-great-grands, how they ate. And I will tell you, on both sides of the family, living beyond 100, So I truly believe in terms of the diet, or the lifestyle, when we're more educated and asking questions, and it goes back to, yes, everyone is a human being at the end of the day. And yes, these are our doctors or whatever professions they have, but it is up to us to also advocate for ourselves, and to ask questions. And if that doctor is rushing you, well, perhaps maybe you have to think twice, and whether or not, if this is the right doctor for you. They should be able to hear your concerns as well too, to give you a greater understanding. So I totally agree with that. I thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge. I do want to go on to your another question that we have here. In your other field as a leader in the patient advocacy or not-for-profit realm, what advice do you have for caregivers, including new moms, when it comes to their personal health?
Thank you very much for that question. So first of all, caregivers are essential. In many families, you might find someone with an illness, with her disease or something like that, and the caregiver. So sometimes we as mothers might be tending to a sick child. We are the caregiver for that child. For instance, in my field with sickle cell disease, parents are the caregivers, right? They are giving care to their child who has sickle cell disease. Sometimes it's a spouse, right? You're supporting your spouse who has maybe a disease or an illness. It might be for a short time, which is maybe that will be called maybe like acute caregiving. It might be for a longer time, which would then be chronic, because it's a long time, because over the course of maybe a child's life. If you have a child with disability, and that child needs help, then you become a chronic caregiver. Now, you cannot give what you don't have. So if you're a caregiver, and you're not taking care of your own self, how can you take care of somebody else? So we need to still start with you as a caregiver, right? A new mom who has just had a baby, of course, is the caregiver for that new child. For that child to thrive and be healthy and be well, it still starts with the mom. Mom has to take care of themselves. Caregivers, parents have to take care of themselves. Whether we have an aging parent and you then become that sole person that supports that aging parent, it's still your responsibility to take care of them. But again, you cannot give what you don't have. So again, you need to first of all check yourself mentally, emotionally. Do I have anxiety? Am I depressed? What is my own state of mental health? We need to deal with that, our own state of mental health, and bring ourselves to a level that we're safe for ourselves and we're healthy for ourselves. Because if you don't have and you're trying to give what you don't have, that's compounding stress and you will get sick as well. And so we deal with that. And when and even if we're healthy, we check mark, okay, yeah, mentally, I think I'm good. I don't have anxiety. I'm not depressed. I'm happy. Life is good except for this issue. So I can bring myself to this stage to support my child or my parent or whoever I have to take care of. At the same time, we have to say, okay, what is required of me? What is required of me to fully function in this role and everything else that I need to do? Do I have it? Do I need support? What are the resources that are available to me? Sometimes we try to do it all and we can't do it all. And I always think to families of children or young people that have different illnesses to use respite for. Let somebody else step in sometimes, occasionally, and you take a break. Take a break and just go to the salon, get your hair fixed, get your nails done. Just go with friends. Like go out, go have a drink, go have, go to the restaurant, whatever you're happy doing. You mentioned before that you love skating. Go with friends and go skating. Get your bike. If you love biking, get your bike and bike. Take a break. Don't get stuck with this person that you are taking care of, even if it's your child. Don't get stuck. Don't feel. I've seen parents feel like, oh my gosh, no, I can't leave my child because nobody can do like I'm gonna do. But if you're dead, somebody else will have to do it, and you'll never be there to even supervise or give opinion because you're gone. So I always say, don't think that you're the only person that can do it. I know of a person and it's not a very pretty story, it's a very sad story, but I think we need to say these things to educate ourselves and to learn from them. Whose child has autism? Autism now is a spectrum. For some, it's very mild, for some, it's severe. This young man has very severe autism. A single mother with two children, one of them with autism, and they were advising her to actually let the boy live in a home, in a group home. And she said no. The boy was very destructive because of the nature of autism that he had, and it was a lot of stress for the mother and the sister. Symptoms of his own autism would be when in the middle of the night he would wake up and he would start to bang the wall and he would start to break dishes, and like it's just very physically, like a physical aggression was involved in all of those stuff. And people around this woman said, maybe it's best he lives in a group home and you go there and visit him. And he said, no, my husband, before he died, we tried to take care of him together. I don't want to put him in a home. I feel guilty. But due to different stresses and all of those issues, one day she was found in the parking lot of her home with her head on the steering, dead. Very sad.
Oh
So that's
dear.
what happened. And so then what happened, this boy has to end up in the group home anyway. So
Mhm.
we have to know our limits. as a caregiver to say, what can my body take? Let's take an account. What can I handle myself?
And I'm going to just like hold your thought there because you said some amazing things. And what I keep on hearing is in terms of taking a break, right? And so when you are working with, these individuals, and you're speaking in terms of advice that you can give to them, what I heard is for them to take a break, to do some of the things that they love, but also to know that they cannot carry this heavy load by themselves, and, to accept the support or the resources or the helping hands that are basically there. And so this quote comes to mind: it takes a village to raise a child. And so that child could be anything, right? And so Ms. Landry, you mentioned also in terms of, sometimes individuals having children that have disability, and also with the autism that is on the rise, even within the schools, in the classrooms as well too. And yes, there are different levels or severities where that is concerned. So what advice do you give to an individual, as one of your former clients, or one of the individual that you spoke of, in terms of support or resources? That's one part of the question. And the second part is like, how do we break the stereotypes or the barriers as it relates to stigmatization of placing, a loved one or a child in a particular care facility, as the one that you were talking about, the young lady who had the autistic child?
Yeah. Thank you so much. So first of all, I want to take it from where you talk about the situation. So you must accept the situation. No one wanted to have a child that have maybe an illness or disability. But if that is your situation, the first place to start is to accept. This is the situation. Until you accept the situation, you will not be able to take care of that individual effectively. Once you accept the situation and you said, okay, this is the situation, we will do all things we need to do to support this child or family member that needs us, that is, have this disorder or this illness. That's all we can do. So we are accepting, and then we're looking what is the best support for the individual that we're supporting. So best support cannot be done by just us. We also need external resources. But I find people from, like African, Caribbean, our communities, we want to do it by ourselves because we kind of feel guilty that if I'm engaging other people, maybe I'm not a good mother, maybe I'm not giving it all. So I need to be in the center of it all. And then I'm going to feel like I'm doing all. But this is where I find like Caucasians are different. They will utilize every resources that they have access to support themselves. If a child is aggressive and they cannot manage them at home, they will put them in a group home. But God forbid it for us. It means we don't love our child. It means we are discarding the child. And God forbid I discard my child. And that is a mentality, but we're going to change those mentality because the group home is there to help, and you can be part of the care of your child in the group home setting. It's very important. Like you said, autism is on the rise. At one point, we would say 1 in 600 babies born in Canada we have autism. Today, I can tell you 1 in about 40 babies born we have autism, and the number keeps going down. And I was talking to a researcher one time who told me it's coming to that time you're going to say 1 in 4 babies will have autism. We don't know what is causing it. We don't know exactly why this is on the rise, but it's on the rise, right? So that's one of the cognitive disability that is there that could be very challenging for families to handle. And so taking the help that you need. I mean, like I said, autism, for instance, is on a spectrum. So if you can manage your child at home, by all means, keep them at home. If things are getting out of hand, you need external help, for heaven's sake, get the help. Autism is one of the most researched programs in Ontario, at least. You have access to support. You even have access to respite support. How about you can take a break and just take time off and chill by yourself or with your friends and just keep your own sanity as well, right? So there's
Mhm.
one. There is stigma in our community for sure around autism, around sickle cell, around everything. You'll find two sisters with children with sickle cell sometimes don't tell each other until they just sometimes meet in the sickle cell clinic. Oh, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? So we both know what we're doing here because it's a sickle cell clinic. We don't talk about these things because we just feel that there's a stigma. And and I do understand for some of the, like for some countries where, some of our black people coming from, there's a lot of stigma, a lot of shame around autism, around sickle cell, and this kind of chronic disorders. I know even in the Middle East, like they have a similar disorder to sickle cell called thalassemia. And because you want to marry into a family that the woman can give you good, healthy children, if they know you have this disorder, nobody really want to marry you. So what happened? What do they do? Nobody talks about it. We keep it hush hush, but that's not helping us. We cannot let these things have a hold on us.
Right. I'm going to just hold you here because like this is just an amazing conversation. I just want to again address some of the things that you had said just for our viewers as well too, right? But then I also had some questions as well too. Um, but so backing up into the conversation in terms of when you mentioned anxiety and depression, right? A lot of people would say, okay, I'm feeling this particular way, and not being hopeful to know that, okay, well, they can also receive the tools, techniques, and tips
Yeah.
to help them navigate, right? But because of the stigmatization, especially within the Black community, right? If I need help, then um, X, Y, and Z. If I go here, then I'll look this kind of way or whatnot, right? And so the same thing in terms of depression, people who feel that way is because also they feel that it's out of their control. But again, once they have like all these, the doctors, like all these different resources, all these different organizations, people like you and your organization and things of that nature to give advice and steer in the right direction, then it helps. And what else also came to mind too is that when Ms. Lanra, you were saying to accept the situation, then the question for me was, well, what if they don't? What if they don't know how to? What if they're scared to? And I know that your organization looks at all of these different things. And just finally, in terms, or not finally, but in terms of the autism and the whole, again, the stigmatization that's surrounded about that, around that in mental health, as it being a shame on so many different levels. And as you mentioned, in terms of culture and things of that nature, when people are going to get married, and if it's an arranged marriage, and like what is that going to look like for the family. But when you mentioned the autism, me just putting on the hat of an educator, I do have an amazing student who is as such, but he would be misinterpreted. And I've sat and watched when other supply teachers, right, if I had to go to a meeting, just giving them some information, would overlook him, right?
Mm.
Because they've already had some kind of preset notion of his quote unquote capabilities, right? However, when we work together, as you said, right, helping, giving that extended hand, then, the psychologist is involved, then the speech pathologist is involved, and then other agencies are involved, then the school team is involved. And now, although I'm going to be sad to see him go, he's going to be able to enter into a program for a year that's going to help him even more. Because what he's doing at school, he's not necessarily doing at home, and it needs to be consistent, right? So thank you for shedding light on those pieces of information. And please continue on in terms of you
So
speaking.
thank you. You had asked the question, like, what about if they don't want to accept, or they don't know how to accept the situation? I think this is where peer support groups are very important. I know Autism Ontario, Paris Place, and actually I served on Paris Place Board of Directors as a board of director a few years ago. Career is an agency that supports people with autism as well. And so, like, those kind of agencies, you can tap into peer support group. You can tap into WhatsApp group for these disorders. For sickle cell, we have a family WhatsApp group whereby families and individuals with sickle cell and their family members are just the people on this forum. And this is a safe space whereby people are freely sharing what they are going through, right? They are able to share. This is my truth, my reality. This is my stage. I just have my daughter. I just got the news from Newborn Screening Ontario that my newborn baby has sickle cell disease. What do I do? Well, we have mothers who have children who are 5 years old, or 10 years old, or 30 years old, or 40 years old. We have parents from different, age spectrum who can really guide you and give you advice, and they will understand because they were there as well. So you need to tap into others. You need to engage other people. Don't walk the journey by yourself. It's a very lonely journey. It's a very tough journey. I watched my own mother walk the journey of having children with sickle cell disease, and due to stigma in Africa, doesn't want nobody to know and just deal with it, right? My parents dealt with it by themselves. And even when my brother died at the age of 30, due to preventable sickle cell complications, we still are not allowed to talk about sickle cell in my home. It's just like a taboo, like, no, don't talk about it. And so, to me, looking back, I felt very sorry, that they had to have that experience, and they're not free, And so when I go around and I talk about sickle cell disease, I have a freedom. I have a freedom. I said sickle cell has no hold on me, so I can talk about sickle cell. I don't have stigma anymore. I used to also have stigma around sickle cell because I grew up in a family that you can talk about it. So you grow up that is the way you were raised, because, like I said earlier, it affects everything else about your life and your family. Who's going to marry into your family? Who's going to marry you? What are you going to do in life? There's just so much that surrounds it that in some cultures, you just don't talk about it. The stigma is real. And so when those individuals migrate even to Canada or US or UK, they still go with their stigma, right? From the Caribbean families, it might not be as tough or as strong as it is from the African families that are coming from the continental Africa. But I'm sure there's still stigma also from the Caribbean coming in and also dealing with these issues, because as human beings in general, we want to talk about things that are happy, that are pleasant. We don't want people to know about things that are not so nice about us, because we're feeling like people are going to judge us, one way or the other. For instance, even yourself, talking about your cancer journey, it takes courage, because there's somebody else that also had a cancer journey that's not going to talk about it because they just don't want people to say, oh my gosh, you have cancer. And so what? And so when I talk to my young people, like my teenagers in the organizations that have sickle cell disease, maybe we are having a youth peer support meeting, I tell them, introduce yourself as I am ABCD, I have sickle cell disease, and so what? Somebody else has diabetes, somebody else has high blood pressure, somebody else has something else. I have sickle cell disease, and so what? So we have to also help as a community to empower people to be able to be free from I call it bondage or stigma that kind of binds you and making you not free to talk about it or empower other people. I remember about 18 years ago when we started sickle cell awareness group of Ontario, and I would go to different churches and mosques and temples, and I would talk to people about sickle cell. Every time I go to a church, a Black woman will meet me at least after the service and say, "You're so courageous to talk about your story. I just want you to know my or my daughter has it, but I don't talk about it. I
And
don't
you know
talk about
what?
it.
I love, I could just speak with you and listen to you like forever. And again, I'm going to go back to some of the things that you had said, you know, the whole don't talk about it. And you mentioned there's certain words that just really jump out or resonate with me, and it's empower. Anytime that I go and speak, I always like to say to educate, to elevate, and to empower. And I feel that the reason as to why people were not speaking about it is because they didn't have that education to know. They only had that stigmatization. But as you mentioned, in terms of this whole empowerment movement, once we have this information, this knowledge, we're able to equip ourselves and we're able to empower. Something else that you said too, in terms of having these courageous conversations, you know, I remember my parents basically saying, open up my mouth and talk. And I was never hiding the particular situation because a lot of people didn't know. And through it all, I was loving myself. And this is going back to the beginning of our session here in terms of self-care and self-love. But that's how I was raised, to know that Black is beautiful, that I am. So even with the mastectomy, and when I looked in the mirror and then I was seeing, you know, tissue expanders and things of that nature, I still love me. I swear to goodness, it was not when all my hair had fallen out and I was seeing it grow back. I said, I am his masterpiece and I am his, you know, the palette is, you know. So in regards to those courageous conversations, I believe that I was even having that at the hospital as well too. For some reason, people would just always come to me and we would have conversations. Sometimes they were asking for prayer. Sometimes they were just wanting to hear, you know, or sometimes I would just see the fear in their eyes and then just say a kind word. And from that, you would be surprised the bond that comes about. So what I thank you for that. There are a few questions that I have as well that I would love for you to further educate the audience, and that relates to the difference between the sickle cell disease and the sickle cell trait.
Thank you. That is an amazing question. But before I answer that, I want to just go back to something you said about yourself. And I think that is where it starts, right? Because even though you had the mastectomy and all of the surgery, so what? You love yourself. You cannot give what you don't have, but because you are rooted in loving yourself, no matter what happens, you still love yourself. And that is one of the ways that we as caregivers can also, develop ourselves by loving ourselves. And once we love ourselves, we can give more to others, right? Um, in terms of sickle cell and sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait, and that is the whole anchor of what we do, sickle cell awareness, because our organization is also called the Sickle Cell Awareness Group of Ontario. Awareness is lacking. You mentioned education a few times, and that is what it is. Our community is not educated enough when it comes to sickle cell disease. I tell you, sure, we get diabetes, we get high blood pressure, we get all of these that other people get. One disease that predominantly affects Black people more than any other race in the world is sickle cell disease. And that was why I joined the Black Health Summit table at Ontario Health to really put the voice in there for sickle cell disease, right? We talk about cancer and we get cancer. We talk about surgeries, we do surgeries, cataracts, and all of those things. But sickle cell disease is something that we can prevent if there's education. Some things we don't have control over, but there are some things we have control over. Sickle cell is one of them. Number one, sickle cell trait comes about as Mother Nature trying to protect itself from malaria. One thing you find common is sickle cell and malaria endemic regions of the world. That is the origin. So when there's a mutation of one copy of our gene, of our red blood cell gene, we'll get sickle cell traits because of that, right? Because that's a mutation of one copy. And what happens is that person would now be getting malaria. So Mother Nature tried to mutate one copy of our hemoglobin so we can be protected from malaria. Mother Nature is kind, but there's repercussion to that mutation. When that mutation occurs, and I now have one copy of sickle cell gene, making me a carrier of the gene, or we can say I have sickle cell trait, a trait. If I then fall in love with someone else who also has one copy, the good thing is if we live in malaria endemic regions, we don't get sick, our life is beautiful, we hardly have any symptoms. So life continues. But if we decide to have children, that is where there's a problem. Because when we procreate as a male and female, every pregnancy, there's a chance of the baby coming out with either a sickle cell trait, because father and mother both have the trait, so we can say they are AS. The A is a normal hemoglobin, S is sickle hemoglobin, mommy is also normal hemoglobin A, and sickle hemoglobin S. There are other variants of the sickle hemoglobin as well, but let's go with AS. So that child will have to, is the law of nature. You can't just pick from daddy, nothing from mommy. You have to pick one copy from daddy, one copy from mommy. So you can then pick daddy's normal hemoglobin A and mommy's hemoglobin A. And that's one child coming out. You go back and get pregnant. This baby can then pick daddy's hemoglobin S, mama's hemoglobin S, and come out with the disease. Another pregnancy can occur whereby baby pick daddy's hemoglobin S, mama's hemoglobin A, coming out with a trait again. So you can have, if you have two individuals that both carriers don't have the disease, they can come out with children, with some of the children having the sickle cell trait, sickle cell disease, or no trait at all. But you know what's funny with law of nature? It's like toss of the coin. Both of them, the children could just be picking daddy's hemoglobin S, mama's hemoglobin S, and I've seen a family with both two carrier parents and all of their children have sickle cell disease. None of the children are picking the normal hemoglobin, they're just picking the sickle hemoglobin from daddy and mommy, and then they're coming out with the disease. Now, when a child has sickle cell disease, they need to be identified. Without identification, we're not able to give them proper treatment. We thank God for Canada, US, UK, those what we call high resource countries, that we are able to, identify. I mean, in Canada here, when I was the national president for Sickle Cell Disease Association of Canada, we did a lot of work to get almost every province to start to screen babies for sickle cell disease when they're born. We still have 3 provinces left, and all 3, I think, between now and end of the year, they should start screening. But I can tell you that by identifying babies is how we can then give them the right care at the right time. Sickle cell disease is a disease I don't wish on my worst enemy, and I'll tell you why. It caused a lifespan drastically by about 25 to 30 years compared to their peers. You can pass on this disorder as well to your own children. It comes also with excruciating pain that has been compared to terminal cancer pain, and so on and so forth. But the good thing is, if we are aware of our trait status, we can then make better decisions about procreation, choice of partner, or even if you choose who you want to live with, you can also adopt, you can also test the fetus in pregnancy. There are so many things that need to be done, but you need to be aware first and know. And so,
I'm so sorry. And just to speak, because there's a wealth of knowledge that you're giving. And again, I'm just hearing the word aware. And when you are aware, then you know. And so if I heard correctly, in terms of, if I remember where biology is concerned, the dominant and the recessive genes, right, that you were talking about for our audience. And the reason why I'm also fascinated with this as well is because my husband is a sickle cell trait or carrier, and so is our son. And so, and I know that he's supporting us here here with the webinar today as well too. And there's definitely a difference in terms of the disease and the carrier and the trait. And you went into extensive or great detail in terms of that. I wonder if you could, Miss Lanre, if you can speak a little more about some of the symptoms, because I know that you were saying excruciating pain in terms of like what the cancer patients may have, but then again, as you were saying, when you were giving the different scenarios with the different children and with the parents and whatnot, things could be different. I had no pain. I even reduced my medication when I could. I denounced certain medication just because of me always advocating and researching and knowing. And although I didn't have to read that, and although I have access to my files, I felt that, you know, I need to do this. This was just me. So I reduced when I need to reduce. I said, no, I'm not taking that when I didn't need to take it. So I wonder if you could just speak a little bit more briefly in terms of some of the symptoms for the sickle cell traits. And then something else that came up as well too, is in terms of where individuals can go to receive information. The Taboo Center came up and it's located in Scarborough, but what happens when it's worldwide? Is there a particular number that people can call? Do they do a search on the net? Please speak to that.
Thank you. So in terms of symptoms for sickle cell trait, most individuals with sickle cell trait, which is just one copy of the gene, would not experience pain. Life will be normal, but they need to be careful because one copy of their gene is still sickled, there is reduced oxygen in that sickle gene. And because of the reduced oxygen, if they overexert themselves, they could drop dead. I've seen people drop dead in the gene. In the US.
Miss Lanre, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Can I just tell you something? I don't know if you saw my mouth literally opening.
Yeah.
I know my child is listening. Normally my husband is, I'm not sure if he was resting because it is Mother's Day, so he was making a nice brunch. But in the summertime, this basically happened. And do you know our son even researched this and says, Daddy, something in regards to the oxygen. He was standing up and sometimes when it's like in a hot area or whatnot, he's a tall man, he's 6'1", 6'2", and fell backwards and hit his head and was out for 3-4 minutes. We were in emerge. He was on, the cardiac floor just because they were assessing all of these different things. So now, if I'm hearing correctly, Miss Lanre, because of the fact that he has the sickle cell trait, it reduces the oxygen.
Yeah.
Is this what I'm hearing?
Yes.
If I was not moderating, I would put myself on hold and wake him up so he can listen. Thank you. Please go forward. I'm going to take notes. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. And we have further, and you can Google and research this. Many American footballers or basketball players playing and just dropping and dying on the court because they didn't know, they were not aware that they have sickle cell trait. And because they still reduce oxygen, so we will say, we're not saying don't exercise, don't do, but doing moderation. And when you're thinking like, okay, I think I'm reaching a level that I need to stop, please stop, right? So that is very important. There's also very rare, unusual situation whereby people with sickle cell trait, very rare, like I said, very unusual. People with sickle cell trait also experience excruciating pain, similar to the disease, but it's very uncommon. I know one in in Alberta, and that's going through that, and she actually has to get treatment similar to someone with the disease, because again, when you talk about sickle cell trait, right, it depends on what is the level of the S in your blood versus the normal, right? So you have normal, but you still have the sickle, right? So what is the level of the normal versus the sickle? If you have a lot more of the sickle versus the normal, you might have to have symptoms that's similar to the sickle cell disease. And if you have a lot of more normal than sickle, then you will be symptom free, basically. So that is that with sickle cell trait. Now you go to the disease. This is where you have a lot of symptoms. Now, Mother Nature is also good again. I'll tell you something. There is something called fetal hemoglobin, which we all born with. Is a baby blood. But as we reach about 1 year of age or something like that, our fetal hemoglobin start to get reduced because that's like a mother hemoglobin that we're still using as a baby, and then we are living off our own hemoglobin. Some people, not a lot of people, then still retain their fetal hemoglobin at a higher level than most would, and that is a plus if you have sickle cell disease. Reason being that fetal hemoglobin is not sickle, is a normal blood. So if you have sickle cell disease and then you retain a high level of fetal hemoglobin in your system, then that fetal hemoglobin is compensating and helping you. And I know one lady, she's about 40 years old, never had one sickle cell crisis in her life. She lives like she doesn't even have sickle cell disease, even though she has sickle cell disease, because she also has a high level of fetal hemoglobin. Now, because we saw what Mother Nature has done, science then went and patterned a drug called hydroxyurea. They patterned the drug with the fetal hemoglobin. It was intentionally made for cancer, for blood cancer. But we find it works for sickle cell. Our patients who are on hydroxyurea now then have that fetal hemoglobin, alternative or kind of in their system. And what does that do? Increases normal blood that they can use. And that is helping our patients tremendously. Now, you asked me for awareness, for education, where can they go? Yes, Taibo has programs. Black Creek Community Health Center in the West End is also good. Our organization, this is all we do, Sickle Cell Alliance of Ontario. Every month we have a webinar on a topic of sickle cell trait. We just started a partnership with Black Creek Community Health Center, what we call Saturday Sickle Cell Talk, which members of community can be part of. You can reach out to Black Creek Community Health Center and ask about it, and when the next one is taking place, to join in. It's basically educating the community on sickle cell. As an organization also, our website is www.sicklecellanemia.ca. You can check us out, check our website, see upcoming events and webinars and education sessions that we have. And if you have somewhere or know someone that has sickle cell disease and you want to be part of a community, we have the peer support programs, we have the WhatsApp and all of those beautiful community support system and network. We even provide respite support for our families, right? Because we very much believe that, you have children, you have family member with sickle cell disease, you need a break yourself. So we provide emergency food support, respite support. We provide even transportation support when you're going for treatment and so on and so forth. So we do all of these things to support our families, right? So these are some of the things that we do as an organization, because I think it's very important that, because having a child with sickle cell disease is not a joke and it's not fun. It takes a lot out of families. I've had parents say, "Why me? And if I had known." And I've seen this lead to many homes being broken because we're not patient with each other and we're blaming each other and pointing fingers at each other to say, "Well, you didn't tell me you have the trait. Well, you didn't tell me either," right? So, like, I think it's just in education, like you keep saying, and awareness. And as people who identify as risk for sickle cell, which people who are from, who identify from Africa, whose ancestors are from Africa, Caribbean, Middle East, South America, those neck of the wood, South Asia, need to be aware. It's a free test. Just take your OEP card and go to your doctor and say, "I need to test for sickle cell trait." You would know. And then
Can you repeat that again, please, for the audience members in terms of what they can do to advocate for themselves?
Yes, to know if you carry the sickle cell trait, what you need to do is ask your doctor to send you to the laboratory with a requisition for sickle cell trait. The actual test is called hemoglobin electrophoresis. Hemoglobin electrophoresis. And your request for that, they will be able to tell you that your child has sickle cell. I'm going to tell you one beautiful thing that's going to happen shortly. Currently, right now, when a baby is born, in our province, Ontario here, with sickle cell, when the baby is born in general, that baby is tested for sickle cell disease. And newborn screening in Ontario will also flag if that baby has sickle cell trait. Currently, if the baby has sickle cell disease, then they will reach out to the parent and say, come into the hospital for, because your child has tested positive for sickle cell disease. But even though they know if a child has a sickle cell trait, currently they don't inform families. We've been advocating from 2019 that families should also be informed, because what they've been saying is that because sickle cell trait is not a disease, maybe families should ask them if they want to know. But guess what? If I have a baby, my baby is healthy, I am not going to say, by the way, there is something called sickle cell trait. I should be reaching out to Newborn Screening Ontario and asking if my baby has sickle cell trait. Truly, how many people is going to do that? So nobody's doing that, in my opinion. And so we said, make the information available to every family. If their child has sickle cell trait, tell them. And that is going to happen very, very shortly. We're almost there.
Perfect. And on that note, because I'm just being made aware of the time as well, too. I'm so super excited. I'm always a person who's always jotting down notes. However, again, you mentioned something in terms of every family being able to, know of this particular information as it relates to sickle cell. And I know before the live had happened, we were talking about equality and equity. Equality being that, everyone would get it, but equity is everyone is getting this, but it's being more defined now. And so we're moving on things. Just quickly, I know that you had spoken in terms of, recommending to the audience in terms of continuing their learning. You have given a wealth of information as it relates to resources, the webinars that you mentioned, the Black Creek community. The question is that in person and online, or do you have the option of both? That would be a quick yes or no. And then I'm going to ask you another question, please.
The Saturday Sickle Cell Talk is in person at Black Creek Community Center. Our webinars are online.
Perfect. I thank you so much for that. And also, I know that there's still some amazing things that you would like to share. We've addressed so much, and I believe that this, 1 hour and a half per se in regards to this special Mother's Day edition is clearly not enough. But I know that this is going to be very informative for those who watch. If there's anything that I'm leaving out that needs to be addressed, or that you would like to share upcoming things within the community under the umbrella of sickle cell and personal care, please share.
Thank you very much. So another thing that I would like to say is that on June 17th, we'll be having the Hope Gala and Awards for Sickle Cell Disease. As you know, World Sickle Cell Day is June 19th. In our country here, it is actually the law. They passed the law. We did the advocacy in Ottawa to get the, Ottawa to pass June 19th has the law. And in Ontario here, it was also passed last year, has, World Sickle Cell Day. And to kick the multiple events and activities that we have lined up for World Sickle Cell Day week, a whole week, we used to celebrate and raise awareness, including illumination across all landmarks in our province here in Ontario. You'll be able to, on June 19, gaze at CN Tower or CNA grants or landmarks. Maybe you are in Hamilton, you are in Brampton, you see like the City Hall landmarks and all of that will be literate, right? To mark all of that, we have the Hope Gala and Awards on June 17th. We'd like you to support the gala. There's more information on our website, www.sicklecellanemia.ca. But it is actually happening at the Woodbine Banquet and Convention Center in Etobicoke. You can purchase your tickets online. We'd love to have you. It's a great opportunity for you to support the worthy cause and be part of fundraising and fun, having and fun activities, dancing and all of those stuff while we raise money for a worthy cause. So I want to thank you, and I'm hoping that the audience will really, see it fit to support the sickle cell community on that day. Thank you.
Wonderful. I thank you for that. And if I may, I would just like to speak to the role of the author that I briefly spoke about. There are 3 books that were birthed out of this experience, and I call them the Conquer Her book series, spelled CONQU -HER, just because of the fact that I know that I was assigned this mountain to show other people that it could be moved. And so they have not been released to the public as yet. However, one is titled Conquer Her, Me and My Breasty Regiment. And that basically spoke of all of the things that that I did that allowed me to be healthy, even in the midst of this, right? Because the reality is that nobody wants to be told that they have the breast cancer, but however, some will experience it as I had. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative one. So that's one book. The second book is titled Conquer Her Thoughts, I Got This Mountain, 12 Mountains Moved. And again, it's just offering a kaleidoscope of information, guidance, support, and encouragement for anyone that has a breasty, I like to say. And for anyone that knows me, the way that my books are written is that, I have short stories. It's very interactive where you're able to actually write in the book, and there are affirmations as well. And the third book, Conquer Her, is a devotional, and that was birthed again. So we were talking with Miss Lanray and, talking about the importance of having that relationship with a doctor, or having a doctor to have these different checkups. And she had mentioned a few words to me saying that I was a woman of grace, of courage, and hope, and etc. And so that is how the Conquer Her devotionals 12 Mountains Moved book came about. And it's powerful. It's a purpose-driven book of quotes, of scriptures, of reflections, writing activities, daily affirmations. Some are prayers that are directly from my parents. So I had wanted to share that as we are fast approaching, towards the end of this amazing Mother's Day session. I did want to, also just thank you, Ms. Lanray, for your wealth of information, your knowledge as it relates to, what it truly means to take care of one's personal health. You mentioned, you spoke about in terms of not only mentally, but physically, spiritually. You mentioned the different breaks, or how we can be aware, and the importance of doing so, especially coming out of the cusp of unprecedented times where COVID and this pandemic was about. And so when we speak about an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, you basically allowed the viewers to get a little more educated, right? In terms of what that basically means on this day where we think of those who fit the title of mothers, or choose not to be, or yearn to be, et cetera, et cetera. So I thank you for everything that you do or have done in terms of patient advocacy. I think it's very, very important, because when a dialogue is unspoken, I normally like to say, it becomes spoken. And that's when the form of empowerment comes about, when we're able to give this platform and amplify people's voices and give them the tools, the tips and techniques to navigate through the storms of quote unquote life. So thank you for that. I do want to ask you this. What words, actions, and thoughts come to mind when you hear the word personal health?
Thank you. Well, first, for me, when I hear the word personal health, is about self-care. But I also want to say that self-care doesn't mean self-centeredness. As we look at taking care of ourselves, I also think a good part of that is also to look at how do we also support other people as well, because in supporting other people, there's also joy where you feel like you're useful to other people. Maybe there is a neighbor, there is an elderly neighbor that maybe sometimes you just help them with their groceries or help them when you're already clearing your snow and you say, well, maybe I help you clear your snow. When you also help other people, right? So we don't, with personal care means, yes, self-care, but it also means that we don't have to be self-centered. We can also extend ourselves to everyone, but it has to be within what we can offer. We can't give what we don't have.
Yes, and I hear that so loudly, and it's a gentle reminder for myself as well too. Even when you were talking about your clients and you were talking about them, and their children, and if we continuously deplete ourselves, then how can we give to others? And when you're mentioning in terms of the self-care, I know that one of the books that is going to be released to the public, the Me and My Breastie one, it does talk about that self-care, that self-love. What am I ingesting in, and what am I putting inside of my mouth? What am I watching? What am I hearing? Am I surrounded? And because I was surrounded by love, there was a lot of prayer. There was like, I watched what I ate, and I also exercised, even in those moments, although I knew my body felt different after chemo, just in terms of the fatigue, my mind is saying, okay, yes, I can run, but no, nothing of the sort,
Yeah,
right? So laying down on the bed, making those modifications. So I thank
yeah.
you for that. And then lastly, Ms. Lanre, I wanted to ask you if you could share your expertise again. How does one's family members and loved ones mobilize efforts to support, a particular person's health?
Thank you. So dealing with our situation, um, perhaps, perhaps maybe a personal health issues, and then we're at that point we are mostly relying on family, to support and be there for us. But for some people, they might not have even family members around, and they might have to deal with this, and maybe with resources in the community, maybe that's what they have access to. Now, for those that let's start with those that maybe have family members around, allow them to help within what they can do, and be gracious with whatever they can offer. Sometimes we might even expend a little bit too much to say, well, why are they not doing that? And I mean, they should have done that too. But maybe that's what they can offer. Maybe that is what they can actually. Because, like I always say, you can't give what you don't have. Maybe that's what they can do. Be be thankful. Let's be thankful and accept what they can provide us. They can provide to us as support. Whatever is lacking, let's look at what is out there. You have access. We like if we're sick, we have access to, like in the hospital setting, for instance, you have access to the social workers and all of those other amazing psychosocial team, and you can look at what resources are out there. What can I get access to? And they'll be there to support. What organizations are working in this area, and maybe I need to be part of. I remember I was in a clinical trial session one time organized by Clinical Trial Ontario. And a lady spoke on that session and spoke about how she was cured of a particular cancer because she was part of a clinical trial that she had access to, because she just wanted to actually just help with the clinical trial, but he ended up curing her. So when you're trying to help other people, you might as well you sometimes help yourself. So again, what is out there? Some of us are very just in our own world, but reach out to patient organizations in the area of disease or disorder, and you might be amazed at the terms of help and resources that they can offer, right? So that is one, because as we're dealing with issues, our family members are also grieving, right? They're grieving, they are dealing with issues. I always say grieving is very broad. There's also the grieving around what could have been. And maybe if my family member doesn't have this situation, what could have been? If my son doesn't have autism, what could have been? My son maybe could have been a doctor, could have been a lawyer, but they have this cognitive impairment that is not letting them move as they should, right? So there is that grieving process, right? And as caregivers as well, we have to allow ourselves the time to grieve. Don't be macho about it. Allow yourself the time to grieve and seek for resources, seek for help. And if family members wants to help and say, yeah, let's help you with your child, don't say no. Embrace it. Take the help because they're part of family. And they're friends and they meant well, right? So I think these are very important points that we need to be mindful of to say we're not an island. We are part of a network, we are a community, and use our community to empower yourself even in your journey, improve yourself. You mentioned the word elevate, even elevate yourself in her journey as caregivers, right? So it's very, very important for us to have, that connection, to our families and to external resources as we progress in our journey as either patients or caregivers as well.
Wonderfully said. Thank you so much. And again, something that really resonated with me is when you mentioned the word grieving, because normally when we hear the word grieving, we think of death. But if we're to delve a little bit deeper, then it is sort of like the death of something, or that, as you had mentioned, what could have been. And so that I was able to make a connection where that is concerned, because when I was going through that process, my parents, who I'm very, very close to, very, very close. Yes, I understand that they're my parents, but they are my world. And I am the woman that I am because of them. When they were in another country, my mom and my dad, but more so my mom, was literally feeling terrible. And I had to say to her, Mommy, the relationship that her and I basically have, that's a beautiful bond. And I know that everything in our home, or what she and my father was doing as well, my husband and my son took care of me. Those angels at Sunnybrook Hospital took care of me. Those oncologists, those surgeons took care of me. God took care of me. And I mention that because I know that you made reference to it. Everyone else's journey is different, but I do know that for a fact. And I know that they were grieving after the fact in terms of, okay, well, here's my wife, here's my mom, and what could have, but they never, ever showed me that during the process that I was going through the journey. It was only afterwards that I heard that there were moments where my husband would be in the vehicle and would cry, but he was the one who was changing my drains. He was the one who was giving me, that medication after every single chemo. He was there until, there was no visitors that were there in the hospital, waving, and the attendants and the nurses are saying, your husband's there. My son was there in the parking lot, and God forbid something was to happen, when my husband was out of the country, he would have had to make the decision, God forbid if mommy was not here, it would have had to been him. So we do have to be mindful of all of that. Again, I thank you so much.
Yes, I just wanted to also say, yes. One comment there to say, and sometimes there is nothing wrong with caregivers, because you mentioned your beautiful husband and and son, and how they were there for you. And sometimes they might also need psychological, psychosocial support. And there's nothing wrong in getting that. And I find in our community, because I said many times when I was at Terry's place for autism, I say that, families, we have to also look at that sibling, right? Who has her brother or her sister with autism. Do you know that there's a grieving in their own right? And we might look at them as a child and what do they know, but that's not true. So we need to also look at what resources are available to support them in their system. Because then, if my sibling has autism or sickle cell or whatever, or cancer or whatever, I'm grieving because I'm thinking if my sibling doesn't have that illness, we could have been maybe in Florida doing something or something, stuff like that, right? Like, what could have been, right? It doesn't have to be, so I really think that we need to stress, even for the Black community, the need for us to also get those external resources for psychological and psychosocial support for our children, our siblings, spouses, as caregivers is very important. Thank you. I know we are running out of time, so I'm going to pause there.
Most definitely. And then the last final minute, I will just say that, again, thank you so much for what you have said. And yes, family is everything. It truly does take a village. Like, I know that our parents and in-laws are rock. And so I know that there was different outlets, perhaps not professionally, but there were other, family friends that had gone through things like that. And so having said that, I just want to thank you so much for, again, sharing your wealth of knowledge. It was such an absolute pleasure. I'm most honored and humbled to be in your presence. I have left with a wealth of information in terms of the difference between the sickle cell disease as opposed to the sickle cell trait, the different symptoms, the different resources, the different webinars, and all of these grand things that are put in place to further educate, elevate, and help us to become more empowered. And so I will leave everyone with this, to remember that you are premised on excellence, you are built to empower, and you are created to inspire. Thank you for joining us with this particular special edition of, how to take care of our personal health. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time. Happy Mother's Day again. Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. One